Hi, welcome to the Israel First television program with myself, Martin Blackham. Natalie's behind the scenes today, but she says hello to you with a program that looks at Israel. We look at the news and we have features from Israel. And in the studio today, we've got a very special guest, David Bedein, from the Israel News Resource Agency. Thank you so much for coming in, David, and giving us your time and expertise over many years of investigative journalism. Now, in the Jerusalem Post, it recently said that US President Donald Trump cuts UNRWA funding. Different figures are bandied around, but it says 368 million to 60 million. A huge cut in UNRWA, apparently. It says President Trump heeded the advice of Secretary of State Tillerson, Secretary of Defense Mattis, and National Security Advisor Master, in addition to that of the Israeli government, agreed to transfer only 60 million to the UN body for now, as opposed to cutting all funding outright. And informing UNRWA of its decision, the Trump administration called for a fundamental re-examination of the agency. Ambassador to the United Nations, Israeli Ambassador Danny Danon, said UNRWA has proven time and again to be an agency that misuses the humanitarian aid of the international community and instead supports anti-Israeli propaganda, perpetuates the plight of the Palestinian refugees, and encourages hate. And David Bedein, who we've got in the studio today, is originally from the United States. He's a writer and investigative journalist. He's the bureau chief and founder of the Israel Resource News Agency and president of the Center for Near East Policy Research. He's covered the Middle East peace negotiations, reported for CNN Radio, BBC, Fox News, ILTV News, Israel's Channel 10 and Channel 1 News. He's investigated the Palestinian Authority and the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, known as UNRWA, revealing the promotion in UNRWA schools of anti-Semitism and incitement to violence. He's also produced investigative films on UNRWA schools and other issues in the Palestinian Authority, and hopefully we'll be seeing a video during the program, David, of you've recently made from the one of the refugee camps. Now, maybe it would be good, I think, for our viewers, just if you can give us a quick background of how you got involved in investigative journalism. You're originally from the United States, and you've been in Jerusalem a long time, I understand.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll tell you, 50 years ago, exactly, in my high school in Philadelphia, a Jewish high school called the Kibbutz Hebrew Academy, a rabbi came to us, and it was six months after the Six-Day War, and he said, actually 8 months after the Six-Day War, he said, you know, Israel now has an opportunity, because it'll be in control of Judea, Samaria, Gaza, and all of Jerusalem, to take apart those refugee camps and help these refugees resettle instead of staying there. Now, the refugee camps were established by the UN, the UNRWA, the United Nations Relief and Work Agency, back in 1949, and as a temporary solution. 59 refugee camps still exist, and they're not being taken apart, despite talks about two-state solution, whatever they're talking about, not taken apart. And the 5 million people who live in those refugee camps, and they're these UNRWA refugee camps, who are descendants of the people who left Israel in 48, are being told, you're staying here until you're repatriated to your homes in 48, even though they don't exist. For the last few years, it's gotten much worse, because the theme of the schools, of UNRWA schools, is right of return by force of arms. And in case anyone was doubting that this was the case, the school books are adopted to that precise idea. So what we did in the past year, our agency, the Center for Near East Policy Research, with a grant from the Simon Wiesenthal Center, we bought all of the school books, all of them, all 205, and we got them translated by professional translators and vetted by Arab translators, and we show a system of every child. We're talking about 500,000 children waking up in the morning, every morning reciting poems about how he or she is going back to where they come from in 48, and every school book, whether it's a math school book or a geography school book, history school book, it's laced with one idea. Right of return by force of arms to that which Israel stole from you, and they killed your grandfathers, they raped your grandmothers, and it's throughout the books. Now, we put them online for people to see. You can see them. IsraelBehindTheNews.com. Very easy to take a look and see what's there.
Now, if you're tuning in and you're wondering exactly about the refugee situation in Israel. I mean, it's a very straightforward situation, really. What happened was that during any war, there'll be movements of population, and there was a lot of Arabs who had to move out of their homes. They were told by the Arab nations that the Arab nations were going to destroy Israel and they would be able to return. So some of them moved out voluntarily and some of them had to move out, but they were in a temporary refugee status. In other words, they should have been resettled fairly fast. I guess I don't know what the normal speed of refugees being resettled in other countries is, but it's not usually a long period of time.
Sure.
And 70 years is totally unreasonable. But not only, as David was saying, not only is the problem that we've got the so-called refugees, it's almost a population in its own right, is also that these people believe that they can return to Israel, not just return to Israel, but destroy the Jewish Israel, destroy Israel as a nation, and resettle it as Palestine. So they've got this, every morning they're taught in school that they're going to destroy the Israelis and the whole of this area is going to be taken over.
The way in which they couch the term is this. They don't say, they don't use the word Israel anymore. It used to be incitement against Israel. That's disappeared. Now the new school books talk about the Zionist entity, the Zionist conquest, the Zionist intruders, and we have to wipe out every Zionist settlement on all parts of Israel. And we're not only talking about Judea, Samaria, Gaza, all part of Israel. And the children have a website they go to called PalestineRemembered.com, which you can see, so they can see the precise homes they left in 1948 and all the maps that they receive in the school books, in the UNRWA school books. And by the way, UNRWA school books are supposed to be in line with United Nations principles of peace and reconciliation and recognition. And a member country of the United Nations being wiped off the map, it's very serious stuff. Now, understand one thing. The United Nations doesn't give any money to UNRWA. That's one of the news items of this program. UN doesn't give money to UNRWA, except for their public relations. The people who give money to UNRWA are the donor nations. The United States leads the band with about $400 million. The UK gives money. And what's very, very important is that Germany has doubled its contribution, despite the idea that UNRWA wants to make Israel UNRWA. I guess they know what they're talking about. And Saudi Arabia has now come in, so the Saudis have increased their contribution by 1,000% over the last 8 years to the point of $123 million a year. Now, why is the Saudi contribution so important? Because Israel and other Western countries are right now currying favor with Saudi Arabia to help the fight against Iran. So the assumption is, oh, they're okay to work with. But it's worse, because the Saudis put their supervisors into the UNRWA education to make sure that there's not incitement anymore, but indoctrination to war. And again, the way they do it is not by saying all of Israel to destroy, but destroy the village, the Israelis who came in place of your village. And it's just so it sounds perfectly reasonable. You're going home, and when a child wakes up in the morning in decrepit UNRWA conditions, let's say he has an outhouse, the mother says, well, you'll be able to go to your toilet when you go back to your home that you lost in Ashkelon, Ashdod, Beersheba, Jaffa, or whatever. So understand, I'm a social worker by profession. This is child abuse. Child abuse, because it's the other thing going on besides manipulating the children. They also have military training in the schools, and in addition, they have this idea that they will take up arms, and in the next few weeks there are going to be marches towards the Gaza border, right, where the children who are armed, and you can see it on our website, we've been filming the children going through military training. If that's not child abuse, what is? Now, what's very important, since Israel may face a whole series of war-type situations in the near future, the children will be very clearly drafted into the fight. And each child goes through a YouTube video. Now, you'll see on our site, IsraelBehindTheNews.com, the videos we've taken of the children. They're very articulate. They're like robots. They don't show hatred. They show war intention. Hatred is something that's frothing at the mouth, things like that. If a child shows hatred, you can bring in some social workers, teachers, whatever. They can reduce that. This is not hatred anymore. It's now war indoctrination. And when bullets start flying in the Middle East in the near future, unfortunately that's the prognosis, the children will be used, and if any child dies in combat, guess how it's going to be presented? Jews kill children. And the little YouTubes, a little Mustafa, a little Muhammad, whatever, will be shown around the world. These little children, they just forget to show the arms training from age 9 to 15 that they go through with real Kalashnikovs and every kind of weapon. And very important to understand what's going on here.
And these refugee camps, David, are they? They're all around Israel, but they're close. I mean, there's Jerusalem. The Shuafat refugee camp is just if you're traveling to the Dead Sea and you've come to Israel and you visit and you go down the road to the Dead Sea, you actually go past. You can actually go past.
Not only that, but you can take the light rail train from the center of Jerusalem to Shuafat, where there is an UNRWA camp, United Nations Relief and Work Agency camp. And the children who are often violent can get on that train and just go to the center of Jerusalem and do what they want. And no one is prepared to deal with that. So
it's like you're breeding a population that has got one thought in mind, really, the destruction of Israel, the removal of the Jewish people from Israel. That they've just got this one thought in mind. Now, you've done a video, David, a very good video recently on the...
This is our trailer. The trailer
for the video on the Shuafat refugee camp, and we're just going to have a look at that now.
פחות מקילומטר אחד מקמפוס האוניברסיטה העברית שעל הר הצופים בירושלים ובצמוד לשכונת פסגת זאב שוכן מחנה הפליטים הפלסטיניים שועפאט. זהו אחד מ-59 מחנות הפליטים הפלסטינים הפזורים במזרח התיכון, שתושביהם דור שלישי ורביעי לפליטות מתעקשים להמשיך ולהתגורר במחנות בתנאים מחפירים, וזאת עד למימוש זכות השיבה וחזרה לבתיהם, מהם ברחו בשנת 1948 בתים הנמצאים בתוך שטח מדינת ישראל הריבונית.
احنا كنا لاجئين هون وقلنا أراضينا قلنا بيوتنا وما حد بنسى إنه ولدنا في المخيم وراح نرجع على أراضينا مهما كلف الأمر.
ليش مع اليهود؟ ليه؟ يعني بيكونوا يعني عدوينا.
مش إلي من القدس إلنا، لا ما فيش عنا لا تقسيم ولا شيء، ما يطلعوا برا من هنا. يروحوا على أمريكا، يروحوا على وين ما بدهم، بس ما فلسطين مش إلنا. فلسطين إلنا.
ביקרנו במחנה הפליטים שועפאט המנוהל על ידי אונר"א, סוכנות הסעד והתעסוקה של האו"ם לפליטים הפלסטינים. נדהמנו לגלות את הלכלוך והזוהמה, את ערימות הזבל, את התנאים הגרועים בהם מתגוררים הפליטים. שמענו על סחר סמים וסחר בנשק. יותר מכל נדהמנו לשמוע את ביטויי השנאה, האיבה, כלפי יהודים, ישראל וארצות הברית. שמענו על נכונותם של הילדים להילחם כדי לממש את זכות השיבה, רצונם למחוק את ישראל. שמענו מהם כי ירושלים היא רק של הפלסטינים, והכותל המערבי שייך גם הוא להם. נדהמנו.
تربينا واحنا صغار هون ونضل هون حتى نحرر البلد.
طب شو رايك في راح يصير حل الصراع ده مع اليهود؟
شو نسوي لهم اليهود اذا ما هدول يهود؟ هدول جواسيس مش يهود.
في مخدرات بالمخيم؟
تقديش مخدرات ايش احكي لك؟
في ولا لا؟
في ولا ليش ما اقول لك فيش هو يعني كذا.
ايه؟
شو ايه؟ من كل شيء فيه، ايش بدك؟
احنا ان شاء الله يعني اذا طول هذا الصراع رح نطلعهم غصب عنهم بارادتهم ولا من دون.
إن لو عاصمة فلسطين الأبدية.
هات البراق اللي سيدنا محمد ربط فيه الدابة اللي طلع في اللي أسرى فيها من الأقصى إلى السماء، وهذا اليهود احتلوها وصاروا يعني يوقفوا عنده ويتقدسوا زي كنا حائط مقدس.
مسجد الأقصى هذا يعني بندمر حالنا، بنقتل حالنا، بنفديه عشانه، ولا ترامب هو على الفاضي بيحكي. بس يعني كذا أقول لك القدس من عاصمة فلسطين، مين ما يحكي أنا وزير رئيس إيش بدك، بس دائما القدس عاصمة فلسطين، وشو يحكوا وكلامهم على الفاضي.
مش عارف كيف حطوه، كان أصلا ترامب كان مصارع، كان عم بيصارع، خلوه ترامب. وما ليش إيش عنا، هو من وين يعني، هو بأمريكا عايش، كيف بيجي بيعلن أن القدس عاصمة إسرائيل؟
זהו התוצר של החינוך בבתי הספר של אונר"א בו לומדים הילדים. כך מטמיעים בקרבם את האשליה כי ישראל תיעלם והם יחזרו לבתי אבותיהם. מטמיעים במוחותיהם שנאה ואיבה לישראל ומכשירים את לבבותיהם להפוך בעתיד למחבלים. כך גם מרחיקים את השלום, הורסים סיכוי לפיוס.
Well, that video really gave you a taste of what it must be like to be in that refugee camp. If you want to find out more about this very important topic, you've tuned into the program today, and we've got David Bedein in, and you want to get some of the resources. David's done the book Roadblock to Peace, How the UN Perpetuates the Arab-Israeli Conflict, UNRWA Policies Reconstructed, with the key and the
That's at the entrance to the Ida refugee camp, UNRWA refugee camp, near the grave of the matriarch Rachel. Now look at that. That's a 2-ton key and a humongous keyhole next to the United Nations flag, right? So the children, you walk into the camp, beyond that to about 200 meters on the right is the school. So on the way to the school, every morning you're reminded of your right of return. You see this keyhole, you see the key, and you have the UN sanction.
Because what we're talking about really, David, is the defense of Israel.
Sure.
At the end of the day, that's the real huge issue with UNRWA, is that it's an organization that is indoctrinating children, is producing terrorists, it's causing all this strife, it's keeping people in refugee camps, it's telling them lies that they can just destroy Israel and come back to their land. So how can they get involved, David? How can they be advocates?
First of all, there's the practical. We've got a website, IsraelBehindTheNews.com. We have all of our contact details there and several thousand articles that you can go through, not all in one time, but you'll see a section dealing with UNRWA, so you get more informed. Throughout the website, we have something called the UNRWA Reform Initiative. Now, what's that all about? The idea is that you can go to your parliament, to your Congress, to your people in your government and say, look, we understand we can't stop UNRWA because UNRWA is ensconced in the structure of the United Nations, under the United Nations General Assembly. The UN General Assembly is never going to change anything that would be pro-Israel. However, what you can do is add very reasonable conditions to your support for UNRWA. For example, how can it be that a United Nations agency will have programs which train the children for war, literally? How can it be that a United Nations agency hires a youth model, a youth singer, what they call a youth idol, to go named Muhammad Asaf, to go around the world preaching murder of Jews? And that's not supported by Iran. That's supported by the United Nations Relief and Works Agency from funds that come from Western donors. How can it be that UNRWA functions in such a way as to keep people in the refugee camps against their will? The Western nations, 68 nations contribute to UNRWA. $1.2 billion flow to UNRWA from the Western nations. Now, there are those that, aren't they suffering? Well, they may be suffering, but they may be suffering from a problem of mathematics in terms of not being able to account for where that money goes. And when the United States recently said they would reduce $60 million of their budget, that would be 3% of the entire UNRWA budget. And I know that the President of the United States saw our material. The Congress saw our material because we brought it there. And we can bring it, if people want to bring our experts to Congress, to any parliament, we can do so. And they were shocked by what they saw. So they said, we're going to hold back. Now, what has UNRWA done as a result? UNRWA is spending several $100,000 on a very high-power PR firm, right, to convince everyone that now because 3% of the UNRWA budget may be slashed, there's now starvation in the camps. I mean, this is ridiculous. I mean, I think at the very least, we should nominate UNRWA for an Oscar. We'll call it UNRWA Universal Studios. Very important. Their acting abilities is tremendous. Well, by the way, in this period of time, we trace it through open sources on the internet. $1 billion has been flowing to UNRWA in this period of time in the winter of 2018. Where is it? Where is it all? Where are all the medical supplies? Where are the food supplies? Well, I'm a social worker by profession. And the social workers who work for UNRWA and the doctors and nurses who work for UNRWA tell me that the material doesn't get there. Well, where is it going? How many pockets are being lined? You know, many of the aid workers working for Western countries could be arrested for not checking out what's happening with the funds and with the equipment. And wouldn't it be nice to see some prosecutions of people who are stealing the funds with the wink of the 68 donor nations.
And it's interesting, David, because in the United Kingdom, in the British Parliament at the moment, there is a campaign to make UNRWA accountable for where the money's going. You know, a lot of you are Israel advocates, and you watch the program and you want to help in some way. Well, this is a way you can help. You can write to your member of Congress, your member of Parliament, your delegated government authority, and you can get them involved,
Sure.
can't they, David? And especially if you're one of the donor nations,
Right.
it's very important. It's taxpayers' money. In other words, this is money which is coming out of your pocket because you're working and you're paying for people to suffer, and not just suffer, but to be used. They're almost like pawns on a chessboard. They're being used to be, at best, a provocation to Israel. At worst, these are people who are potentially going to go into Israel and commit terror.
Let's look at it as a generic issue, not only pro-Israel. I've met with parliament members in Sweden, in the UK, in Canada, in the US, who are not exactly pro-Israel. When I say to them, don't look at my kippah, look at my social work degree, and if funds are being played with, and if there's no accountability and no transparency, that's a violation of basic social work ethics. And when you promote this issue, you don't only say it's a pro-Israel issue. And by the way, the Israeli government does promote it, doesn't promote it. They're a little uncomfortable because if it looks like where Israel wants to take money away from a refugee camp, so maybe governments won't allocate to Israel. Leave the government alone. Deal with it directly. Deal with it as a humanitarian issue. Join forces with people who want to help the Arabs in a humanitarian fashion. That's not a bad thing. But when the money is not accountable, when charitable funds are used to build hotels and to create rings of narcotics, prostitution, arms sales, car sales, and also to purchase all the Israeli products that are being brought into Gaza, this is a problem. And this should be viewed as a generic humanitarian problem. And by the way, that's very important, what you've just mentioned. And this is very important. In Canada, in the US, in Sweden, in England, there's initiatives, legislative initiatives, to have clear supervision of these funds and to stop any funds from being played with in the wrong fashion. And you know, when we showed in our other films the children going through military training, where are they getting the bullets? From the money that's coming from medical services. Medical equipment disappearing and going into military training, there's a problem with that. And we interviewed the leaders of Hamas who endorsed UNRWA and thanked UNRWA for making their military training possible. This wasn't allocated. It's called theft of the highest level. Theft of the highest level of humanitarian aid, and you, as Western democracies, can oversee that aid and don't listen to anyone who says don't pay attention to it.
Well, thank you so much for coming into the studio today,
Thank
David.
you
Great
very
to have
much.
you with us.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much with all your experience of living in Israel and having to deal with this very delicate issue, because, you know, the refugee situation is a delicate issue, but we can see how it's been abused. Get involved today. Don't just watch the program and don't do anything. Write to your government member, write a letter, write an email. You can get all the information about who to contact on the internet. You can look up who's your representative. Get in touch with them today. Say UNRWA has to be accountable for the money, because if there is genuine need, then the money needs to flow in the right direction.
Our experts will come to every parliament, anywhere, anytime. We can also have YouTube discussions. We have our people, Arabs and Jews, who work with us, ready to come and meet with your people who represent you in your democracies. Because democracy is based on the idea that agreement is not essential, participation is.
And we look forward very much to seeing you next week.
Shalom, dear friends. Today we are going to look at a very special name, which is King, and in Hebrew is Melech. We can see written the name King in the Psalms 20 or 30 times. Why do I say that? Because it's again the root word, melech, is also from the verb to reign. It's exactly the same in Hebrew. And the name for to reign is limloch. And you can see the letter mem, lamed, and chaf sofit, okay? And so it's because of that I say between 20 to 30 times. And when we see the name for kingdom and king and to reign, There is two parts in that. There is the first part, which is you have to make war against evil, and the other part is like receiving glory and receiving honor, that we are giving glory and we are giving honor to God. So there is these two parts, okay? Now, last week we looked at Psalm 23, and today we're looking at the Psalm 24, and there you see God also as King. Let us read together in English and in Hebrew. So it's verse 8, and it is, Who is the King of glory? Mizeh melech hakavod, the Lord, strong and mighty. Adonai Izuz v'gibor, the Lord mighty in battle. Adonai Gibor Milchama. So today we look at a few names. We look at King, which is Melech. We can remember the letters is Mem, Lamed, and Chaf Sofit. Chaf Sofit, we call it Chaf Sofit because it's at the end of the name and it changed shape, okay? And we look at Turen, which is the same root word, and is Limlor. We look at mighty, is Gibor, and we look at strong, which is Izuz, and it comes from the name strength, Oz, like Ma'oz. You might know this one is a beautiful song in Hebrew. And the last one that I wanted to say also is Kavod, is like the glory, and it's interesting because again this name comes from the adjective kaved, which means heavy. So the glory is like there is a weight in the glory. So we've done amazing thing today. We look at many words, and we will see you next week. You've done very well. Bye.
Thank you so much for joining us today on the Israel First television program with our special guest, David Bedein. Don't forget to get his books, Roadblock to Peace, How the UN Perpetuates the Arab-Israeli Conflict. And don't forget to visit our website, www.israelfirst.org. Email us. We love to receive your emails at info@israelfirst.org. And remember, we're the program that looks at the land, the people, and the language.